They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking,
hi, this is Nico. You're listening to my dad Fall, also known as the White Rabbit, and James Jardine on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Buckle up and enjoy.
deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
I gotta tell you, that intro does not get old. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. 582 coming at you with a long time coming guest. I figure we'll do Statler and Waldorf for this one because there's very little opportunity where we violently agree on something. But let me introduce the guest. Bill, you know what? I won't be able to do you justice. Introduce yourself, man.
Okay, and we have like an hour to do this, right? So
we can take as long as you'd like.
As long as I want. Bill Pelletier. I'm an information security curmudgeon. Been around since the late 90s, 1990s, not the 1890s. Cut my teeth in information security at a large property and casualty insurer. Basically learned all I could then. Spent 18 years there, moved on to the healthcare space at GE Healthcare to essentially do medical device security back in the mid-teens, 20 teens. Spent a little bit of time at a payer after that, and did my startup time at Scope Security, which I had my startup fleece jacket here.
Nice.
Again, dealing with healthcare-centric issues in IT and security. And I am now at a mid-sized medical device manufacturer up here in the Northeast, working with embedded systems.
Nice. All right. Well, that's a heck of an intro. I mean, I think at some point we all did our tour of startup land.
Yep.
Some of us did well. Some of us just walked out with some swag. I think that's just how it is, unfortunately.
It is.
So, listen, the folks, the catalyst for this episode, as I think I've said like the last 20, was there was a article posted on LinkedIn. I don't remember who posted it. Doesn't matter. But the headline it was on Yahoo Finance. Yes, Yahoo's still a thing. Is on Yahoo Finance, and the title is CEOs will finally admit next year that return to office mandates didn't move the productivity needle. Future of work experts predict. This is December 26, 2013. Or sorry, 2023. 2013? No. How about longing for the past? December 26, 2023, that was published. And I think I looked at that and went, yeah, no, that's not how that's going to go. And I was like, all right, maybe the article has some subtleties. Yeah, no, it doesn't. And so I was compelled, as I often am, those of you that know me, to write my usual lightly opinionated rebuttal, which was just a couple of lines. But basically, it's this. Our return to office or working from an office is to say that it's not a productivity gain, I think is stupid. To take one particular factor as an indicator or as a sway to productivity is equal to stupid. And it tells me these future of work experts actually probably should be out of work. And that's when you stepped in, Bill.
It is, it's one of those articles, if you hadn't highlighted it would have been probably just another one of many that keep popping up for both pros and cons of RTO, right? And I keep thinking of DRBCP when I say that, but that's a whole other time, whole other issue to talk. But yeah, I mean, I could probably condense this entire, hour's worth of however long we talk conversation down to a simple couple of thoughts. And, return to office is going to absolutely depend on the company, the culture, and the teams involved, right? That there's not going to be one factor that says it's good or bad.
I think I think you're right. That's the thing is like anytime anybody says this one factor will be the defining thing that changes, I'm like, that's not how anything in real life works, kids. But let's get back into, so let's get in our time machine, Bill, because I remember, so I've been working from home since 2006. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Now I've been at jobs where I had a stint where the job was work remote, but I was in a leadership position at the office 4 days a week in a different city halfway across the country. But that was, I knew what I was signing up for, right? That's what we were doing. I've done that. And I think my experience, having spanned the technical knowledge worker to like various levels of leadership positions, then to like not really a technical worker anymore, an artist. I've spanned that gamut.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious what your opinion is on, has that changed over history? And I think I've got thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
So there is one thing, right, that we have to absolutely always keep in focus and understand as to what's driving a lot of this. And it's the technology, right? So you've been work from home or work remote since the mid-aughts, is that what we call them? The mid-aughts, 2005. I've been full remote since 2015 when I left my property and casualty and went into medical device manufacturing. The ability to communicate and connect has increased by orders of magnitude, right? So that's absolutely that's a factor, right? It's not the cause; it's a factor. It's a supporting factor. What folks tend to lose sight of is, what's the need? And I'm probably kind of going off on a tangent too early in this conversation, but I'll give you a case in point, right? So my current role is technically full remote, but I get down to the office 1 day a week, a couple of days every couple of weeks, and there's a reason for that, right? And the reason is that all of the engineering teams are located there, with a few exceptions.
Okay.
And so the engineering teams are not geographically dispersed. And there's a reason for that in this particular industry. We work with embedded devices and embedded systems. It's not cloud. It's not traditional IT. They are things that get lovingly handcrafted, built, and developed, and that can't be done in a distributed fashion, right? So a lot of what we talk about today is going to be very heavily dependent upon the company you work for. So what's changed from my perspective? It's been the technology. It's been the ability to press a button and have, like today, a reliable, consistent chunk of bandwidth and tooling to do it. Now, could we have had the same conversation this way 5 years ago? Maybe not. Right? It's a different vector.
So I remember living my work from home experience was interesting in that my part of a sales team, right, at HP, a technical sales team. Everybody there worked from a remote field office, which meant that you showed the office once every couple of weeks to let people know you're still alive. But you were generally out with customers, out in the field, selling, supporting field events, customers, whatever.
Yeah.
And it worked, right? And I think I feel like that early 2000s model, that early 2000s tech model, we're going back to now, but it's for knowledge workers, those that work at a keyboard, and there's a bunch of variants there as well. But I remember like my HP experience from remote, this is great, to when Meg Whitman took over, she's like, everybody's coming back to the office or you're fired. Like that was right after the Yahoo princess did the same thing, right? Marissa did the same thing. And got about the same level of reaction. Oh, is that what you think? Boom, I'm out, right? And all the people that could leave did.
Yeah.
And what you were stuck with was this, like, I guess I need this job, so I need to sit at this desk 8 hours a day. I am fully on board with there's a really good analysis that was done, and there's a couple of podcasts that talk about this too, but that was done. I think it was on Freakonomics. If you ever listen to Freakonomics, Dubner has a great podcast. But he talked about how, that has, like, the nature of the work has changed. And there are many factors, including, like you pointed out, do you have to work on something physical? How is the communication, right? But there is one of those big looming over the top factors is at the core of our being, humans are social creatures. At least that's what we desire to be. Some of us a lot so others, as we get older, particularly. But when we work, right, when you're working in a team, sometimes there is just the value of being able to look at your buddy that you're working with at the desk next to you, go, I'm trying something. What do you think? It's like it's immeasurable. Right? And whiteboarding remotely, right here on my wall together, totally different experience. What do you think?
It is absolutely a different experience. And one of the anecdotes I like to bring up probably more frequently than I should was when I first went from butt in seat in a big, large 300,000 square foot campus office to full remote work from home. Was the office that I had up here in New Hampshire was the last. And actually, I was actually one of the ones that actually had an office, not just a cube, which was good.
Okay.
But I never shut my door because I hate closed doors, right? I never wanted to be away from the conversation floor or whatever. But my office was the last one before the central stairwell down to the cafeteria, two floors down. So everybody on that entire floor would walk by my door and say, hey, Bill, what's going on? What's new? What's up? Blah, 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 blah. Right? Constant drive-bys, right? And it was always an irritation point, not at the people, but just at the interruptions. And so I left and I went full remote for the new company, for the new gig. And for the first couple of months, it's like, this is great. Everything's quiet and I'm not being interrupted. And then I realized, it's really quiet and I'm not being interrupted anymore. And you realize you actually do miss that interpersonal ad hoc random communication pattern, which you can get with remote stuff, but it's a lot more difficult, and I'm probably, it sounds like I'm making the case for RTO all the time, all full speed ahead. That's not the case, right? I'm not going to say that, because I will not go back to an office. Right? I feel pretty comfortable saying that. Right? Never say never, but at this point, I'm not going to do anything to result in that. I get job offers every few weeks for stuff, and about 3/4 of them are either full office or hybrids. And it's like, thank you, but no, I'm done with that. Where was I going? I'm off on a tangent, and my brain is scattered. So where am I going with this thought? It's all about what you said. It's the interpersonal communication pattern that we all grew up with as kids, right? For the most part, losing that is a not insignificant loss. If that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that with full remote, other than having
Yeah.
standing calls and chat helps, whether it's Teams or
It's not the
Slack or
same
whatever.
though.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
And there's a certain amount of, I don't know, there's a certain amount of that human contact. You feel like you're maybe, Bill, maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's just us in our late 30s, 40s, and beyond that are just, this is how we're used to operating. Maybe my kids are going to be, and our kids are going to be more used to just fine with somebody on a computer screen next to them. And then eventually virtual reality headsets and all that. But there is just something about sharing space that is a level of there's not, the only way to think of it is like intellectual intimacy. Like you're actually sitting there. If somebody makes a face at you, you can see it. They can't be fidgeting off of here, off screen here. They can't be like playing solitaire while they're on a call with you. Like,
right,
you're engaged. You are, and if you're not, people can see that visually.
let me inject something here and let you get your thoughts on it, because it's one of those, I'm hearing what you're saying and thinking about what we've both been talking about. And honestly, I haven't really talked about RTO or the ramifications of it with a lot of folks, other than just me ranting online or something. But this started much earlier, right? This whole transition thing, right? And for as much as I've been talking about the value of this interpersonal, in-person, relationship building process, if you go back to, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to blame all this on laptop computers. That would be a stretch, but I think I can blame us on laptop computers. Because I'll say in my early days, in my early career in IT security, you would go to a meeting would be scheduled in the building. You'd go to a conference room. You would all be sitting around the table with your notepads, right? Because laptops were exorbitantly expensive, and those were only given out to execs or road warrior salespeople, or whatever. The rest of us mere mortals had these suitcase-sized PCs on our desks, right? So
Yep.
we had to do things face to face. We had, there was no other mechanism. That's all we knew. Once laptops became accessible, right? Once Dell and others figured out, hey, I can make them as cheaply as desktop systems, or almost. Everybody would show up to a meeting in a conference room with their laptops. They'd flip open the lids, and everybody would have their heads down, taking notes. They would have their heads down, talking to their laptops, not to people around the room, right? You'd lose that. Even though you're in their physical presence, we started to lose that connection, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that's when the downfall of civilization started, I think, was with the introduction of the laptop to the conference room.
Well, so to take, and I think hear what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I get it, and that, like, the whole being mobile and being able to take your compute with you really was different. And then once these devices came along, your cell phones, then it just went to hell completely.
Yeah,
right. Then it's just gone.
I mean, I still take notes, right, in
regular paper.
Yeah.
So I do that. I have notebooks that I write in. Although I've now kind of I've been looking for many years. I was looking for ways to do that digitally, because I like to write. Like, if I write it, I'll remember it, and I'll draw and I doodle and I make lines and emphasis and stuff like that. And I finally found a couple of years ago that the new iPads with the second generation styluses finally got to where I wanted to be. And so me and Notes are good friends now, and it is, you know, it's kind of how I operate, man. I always, and I found a cool screen protector that they claim, you know, simulates like writing on a regular piece of paper, and it is really close with like a smooth pen. It's fantastic, and then not having to carry notebooks. And the thing that notebooks never allowed me to do is like, I had that note. Where the hell is it? Here I can.
Where is it? Yeah.
Index thing, like things get indexed pretty, and it's got, you know, with handwriting recognition. I have pretty decent handwriting anyway because I was taught by nuns. Anyway, here's an interesting thought. I going back to the sort of the future of work. There was a wonderful. I'll see if I can find it and post show notes, but Freakonomics, I think, a long time ago, probably 2-3 years ago, had a episode on this, and they talked about kind of the fallacies of this remote culture. It was right in the middle of COVID. And one of the things they said that was said by, they had an expert on, and this woman was like an actual expert in work culture and such. And she said, where like office, the 9 to 5, 5 days a week office culture came from the 40s and 50s, where the family was structured in a very specific way, right? The father was expected to go out, be gone all day, and come back.
Yep.
And that was their responsibility. And then the wife was at home, and she would take care of the day. Now we've got 2 working parents in most families, right? To get by. And that schedule just doesn't work anymore. You got to pick up kids. You got to go pay bills. You got to go do this, drop that off. And suddenly where jobs that are completely inflexible, it gets really tough to get by and get everything that you need to get done, because life has changed. The job structure has not. And so let's step outside of productivity for a moment, productivity proper, and broaden the discussion to quality of life. Because in an environment where if I were to create, you know, the sort of perfect situation for myself and people I work with, it would be 2 days. And let's pick 2 days where we all agree that we're going to meet 2 days a week. And for those people that are fully remote, like other parts of the country, let's like once a month show up in the same place for 3 days.
Yeah.
We'll save all the ideating and the debates and all that stuff for then. And then we go away.
Right.
We work and we come back and share ideas again and bounce ideas off each other. And then we keep doing this. And
that works,
like,
by the way.
The ability for me to go out and I don't know, run an errand in the middle of the day is invaluable. So if you were to say 8 to 5 in an office, but I'll give you 30 grand more, I would probably look at you and go, pass. Because my ability to just, right, to be able to be flexible. I'm not ashamed to say there's more than one. I've taken calls watching my kids play in the neighborhood pool.
Yeah.
That is not, like, my parents could have never fathomed that possibility. It just didn't exist.
Right. And, you know, because they couldn't, right? You know, my father was flying in a strategic nuclear bomber half the time, halfway around the world, you know, and I didn't see him for weeks or months at a time sometimes. Different conversation. But you're right.
Yeah.
The ability to not just have work-life balance, but have it be micro-balanced. Is that right? Is that a real phrase, a real thought? To get up and
we'll
go,
make up words. I don't care. It's my show.
yeah, to go downtown and get something, or run out to the kitchen and start getting dinner ready for when, you know, my spouse works full time. She works in a traditional medical office environment where there is no work from home, right? Because
Not an option, yeah.
it's not an option, right? So I've become the chief bottle washer and cook at the house. Well, I kind of always have been. Different story. But being able to do that, have us both get home at 6 or 6:30 in the evening and be exhausted, and from a drive or a commute, that to me is is worth a lot. What I will say is, you pointed something out from a hybrid perspective, and not if it's really hybrid or not. If you do full remote but get together monthly or quarterly, that probably is considered hybrid. That works, and it works very well. We did that. We did that at
fantastic.
GE. We did that at GE Healthcare, right? And our team was literally all around the world. And once a quarter, we would fly into Milwaukee or Waukesha, as the case may be, have 2 or 3 days of, absolutely full days, 7 to 7 every day, get a lot of stuff in, and then we'd cast ourselves to the wind and go back to our home offices and keep going, right? That works, and it works very well. But it was also a discipline. It was not as a discipline work, but it was a job discipline that worked because of what we did. We didn't have to be hands-on. If we did need to be hands-on with CTs or MRs or whatever, we'd fly in and work with the teams to do it. But for the most part, we could do what we did remotely.
So
and again,
two things. Yeah, so 2 things as you were talking popped into my head. You mentioned the commute. I tell you, man, having lived when I lived in Chicago, lived out in the burbs like everybody else does.
Yeah.
And whether I was taking the train in or driving in, it's an hour each way plus traffic. That is, let's say conservatively, 2 hours of my day that I get back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not 2 hours of that's not just time, wear and tear on my car. It is, having to shovel the driveway and go out. God, I hated that. And sit in traffic, burning gas, not being in and being away from the house far enough so that if hey, I've got a sick kid, oh crap, it's going to take me an hour to get home versus like a room away. So the commute is a monstrous advantage. Now, the other thing that is absolutely probably top of my list in terms of benefits is the fact that having this flexibility, I can just pick a random Tuesday afternoon and go have lunch with my kids at school.
Yeah.
That is so valuable to me, right? And because it's limited time you get with your kids, and having ability is phenomenal.
So what you're describing is, work-life balance, which a lot of us, it took many, many years for a lot of us to figure that out, right? And
unfortunately,
some of us haven't figured it out. I have, I think, but it's critical to your well-being. I've got some other thoughts on the forward-looking stuff here, which I know is really what you wanted to get to eventually.
Yeah.
Good companies, good managers will always have that work-life balance in the forefront of their direct reports feeds, right? Their well-being. Companies who don't take that into account, they're going to get what they get. I've worked for a couple of those over time. I have a list in my head, and I have a short list of managers in my head that I would never work for again as well, and people that I'm still friendly with, but I would never work for again for those reasons, right? One of the things that the articles coming we'll do an agile type process here, coming back to the beginning of the podcast when you were talking about these articles that kind of prompted this whole thing. One of the salient points, when I was reading through them, I did read them, by the way, and it's a topic that I see over and over and over again, is that one of the reasons that people have to come back to the office is not about this relationship. It's not about building connections. We have all this expensive office space that we have to use. We have to support all these businesses that we've abandoned. It's like, and I'll say this in a very selfish way, but I don't think it's selfish. That's not my problem. Right?
Yeah.
That is not my problem. Now, is it a problem? Yes, it's a huge problem. It's not as an employee, that's not my problem, right? And I shouldn't be forced to self-select positions or roles to help fix somebody else's non-business product related problem. I'm trying to phrase that in a very specific way, right? So as an employee, you're always supposed to be working towards, the shareholders' value, right?
Yeah.
But telling me that I have to be back in the office full time because we're wasting this expensive office space that I took a 10-year lease out on, that's not my problem.
Yeah,
And
true.
I have like no pity for those folks, even though they have families, they have bills to pay.
Bill, I don't know if I buy that that's the art. I mean, yes, there are plenty of companies that during the boom when we were hiring tons of people, employing everybody we could, we had shortages and all that.
Yeah.
We built out tons of office space. Now I'm one of those people that looks around, even the burbs here and watches yet another commercial building go up, going like, why? And then you look in the cities, and some of them are becoming fairly vacant. Mm-hmm. So I have no pity for that, because if you didn't see this coming, this is on you. But I also don't buy that is like the sole reason that companies are forcing their employees to come back to the office. I think it's silly.
It's the reason that I see stated. It may not be the sole reason, but it's always a factor that somebody says is causing them to, they're thinking of the company's bottom line or losing money because how? You're going to pay for the office space anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So having me back in the office doesn't cause you to have to spend any more money or less money. So how does that, anyway, but I see it.
That's a fair straw man argument there for me.
Yeah. I don't know. So what's it going to look like? This isn't going to change in a few years, right? There's so much going on that is going to cause this to stay in turmoil. What's it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I honestly believe that and here's where we may disagree. I think that the COVID-induced shift in workflow, right, wrong, or indifferent, is not reversible, right? It will continue. There will continue to be this shifting, not shift to remote work, but this shifting workload model until some type of equilibrium is accomplished sometime down the road. And I think it's going to be purely a function of job role and company culture, and first and foremost, management capabilities, right? Because that's the other thing, right? You have to be able to measure what people do. What's the old phrase? You can't manage what you don't measure.
That's right.
So you have to be able to measure productivity. That does not mean cameras. It doesn't mean keyboard click counters. It doesn't mean all this stuff.
That's silly.
Right. It means setting realistic goals and expectations. I think we'll see a lot of emphasis on that for this particular type of work model coming out of the schools going forward, which I hope we do, because that's what's going to help drive the settling out of who works in the office or who works in a facility, who can work someplace else, right?
I don't think we disagree. So here's the funny thing. I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I grew up, deals are made with a handshake. You see somebody in person and that the kind of thing, right? So, however, I think you're right. What COVID did was forced a break in the norms that we had carried in from old values in the 50s and 60s. It didn't give anybody the option to say no. And suddenly we realized, hey, wait a minute. There are entire swaths of workers that we simply can let them work differently. And it's okay, right? Yeah. Flexibility is okay. And in fact, in some places, it spiked productivity. Now, the place where it fell down was we attributing it to like one factor, and that's stupid, right? But I think you're right. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, because right now the pendulum is doing. It's worker versus employer.
Yep.
So that's got to stop. But I think we settle on I think over time somebody's maybe these future work experts or maybe people with PhDs or somebody that's smarter than me will figure out here's the 10 factors that will dictate whether you are a remote worker, an in-office worker, a hybrid worker, a full-time,
Right.
You're out there because there are lots of jobs that exist today. We're fully remote without ever seeing anybody else, lighthouse operators, that kind of stuff, right? I'm half joking. But I think we need to settle in. We need to collect some data. We need to and look at it seriously rather than just from this emotional, like, I demand this from my employer. Like, that's great. And they demand that you go get another job. Like, you can't do that. But to say that employers have been reaping a lot of benefits at the workers' expense since 40s and 50s also not true.
I got to tell you, so what's it cost the company that I currently work for me to work out of my house? It has cost them the expense of two, how big are these things? 27-inch monitors and a docking station.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, it cost the other company I worked for the expense of a very nice office chair. But I was able to keep that. And I'll put a plug in, by the way, for Herman Miller M-body chairs are the bomb. They really are. Versus what does the average cubicle cost a company in a large office building? And I'm pulling this number out of my butt, but I think it's going to vary location to location, but it's many thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars a year for the floor to have somebody in that spot. Now, again, I just said this before, the fact that I'm not in that office space that you've already leased doesn't make it any less expensive for the company. But going forward, from a planning perspective, if you've got this differentiated workforce that can work remotely, I think there's a tremendous cost savings to be had there, as long as you can manage it. And it's always going to come back to the ability for the frontline management to manage their direct reports, right? That's always what it's going to come down to. If you've got a management structure in place that relies upon physical presence and constant, touch base type activities, it's when reality meets art meets reality, it's office space, right? Right? Walking around with a cup of coffee and checking in on people. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what occurs in the next 5 years. I think the next 10 years, we're just throwing darts at a wall. I don't know what's going to look like. Because those new people coming into this industry or into the workforce 10 years from now, they're still in grade school.
Yeah, and they're going to demand different.
They're going to demand different. They've grown up with cell phones. They've grown up with tablets. They've grown up with that we didn't have, right? Their experiences are different. They've grown up with FaceTime and things, and it's going to be different. And those that can adapt, not just individuals but companies, are going to be the ones that succeed. The companies that can't adapt will still find employees, will still find workers, but I think they're going to be the ones that they're going to get the folks that just settle for something, right? and aren't going to be the top of the pack, I think.
Well, that's a good place to kind of conclude ourselves. But I think, look, I would say I don't know where this ends either, but I'm telling you, I think the pendulum is going to have to stop swinging so wildly. I think we need research into what are the key factors by industry and by job type, and how do we the nature of work has to change for those that it can change for. And even for those that are, the factory, the line worker, like flexibility just has to be introduced. 8 to 5 for everyone, unrealistic. It just is. It's not the kind of society, like society has evolved past that.
Yeah.
And work has to adapt. Where it's going to go, I don't know. Maybe it'll be before you and I decide that we're done. Maybe not. But I think there's a lot of research and data to get there between here and there.
Yeah.
What isn't helpful is fighting about it.
I don't know. And from an information security, data security, enterprise security, product security, insert some modifier choice there perspective, we're still operating remote work as if it is the occasional VPN user, right? We really, for as much as SASE has changed things, for as much as things like Boomcaster or Zoom or whatever have changed things, we are still operating, I think, my observation, as extensions of a corporate environment and not a truly distributed workforce, right? And that's going to have to change.
I agree. Well, here's to seeing what's next, Bill.
Absolutely. I'll set a calendar invite for 5 years from now, and we'll revisit this.
Listen, maybe we won't have to be. We'll just do it for fun rather than being able to talk about having jobs anymore.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for joining, man. Bill, this has been fun. This has been, I think it's been a good basis conversation, and then like we hit all the points I wanted to. I thank you for your time, sir. It's been a pleasure having you aboard.
Thank you very much. It was fun, and let's talk sooner rather than later.
Well, being the first podcast release that goes into the new year, this is a great start, right? Let's talk about work and
Absolutely.
But the implications of all of this need to be discussed. And I think I'll bring you back later this year in 24 to continue that, folks. Thank you for listening. This has been another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. I invite you, if you haven't already, join us on LinkedIn. Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Join the community. I post some stuff there every once in a while, and it's just kind of notifications about episodes and guests and such. I'm going to tell you that later in this quarter, so Q1 2024, I have got a guest that's going to really change and educate on the notion of security programs. I've had him on an episode already. We chatted. He's got a program and a methodology that is fantastic. We tried to fit in 23, didn't get a chance. Too many things happened, but I am super psyched. It's going to be a 3-parter. It's going to be one you guys are going to want to take notes on and probably watch a couple of times. He really is doing something that's revolutionary. And on that note, thanks for listening. This has been Raf with Mr. Bill Pelletier, and for James and myself, thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast.